Marie Antoinette was the last queen of France before the French Revolution. She was born an Archduchess of Austria. Maria Antonia was born on the 2nd of November 1755 at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna, Austria, at 2030. She was the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa, ruler of the Habsburg Empire, and her husband Francis I, Holy Roman Emperor. Maria Antonia was born on All Souls' Day, a Catholic day of mourning, and during her childhood her birthday was instead celebrated the day before, on All Saints' Day, due to the connotations of the date. Shortly after her birth she was placed under the care of the governess of the imperial children, Countess von Brandeis. Maria Antonia was raised together with her sister, Maria Carolina, who was 3 years older, and with whom she had a lifelong close relationship. Maria Antonia had a difficult but ultimately loving relationship with her mother, who referred to her as the little Madame Antoine. Maria Antonia spent her formative years between the Hofburg Palace and Schönbrunn, the imperial summer residence in Vienna, where on the 13th of October 1762, when she was 7, she met Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, 2 months her junior and a child prodigy. Despite the private tutoring she received, the results of her schooling were less than satisfactory. At the age of 10 she could not write correctly in German or in any language commonly used at court, such as French or Italian, and conversations with her were stilted. Under the teaching of Christoph Willibald Gluck, Maria Antonia developed into a good musician. She learned to play the harp, the harpsichord and the flute. She sang during the family's evening gatherings, as she was known to have had a beautiful voice. She also excelled at dancing, had exquisite poise, and loved dolls. Later in 1768, Mathieu Jacques de Vermond was dispatched by Louis XV to tutor Maria Antonia as she became the future wife to Louis XVI. Serving as an educator, Abbé de Vermond found her to be unsatisfactorily educated and lacking in, at the age of 13, important writing skills. Nonetheless, he also complimented her, stating, her character, her heart, are excellent. He found her more intelligent than has been generally supposed, but since she is rather lazy and extremely frivolous, she is hard to teach. Following the 7 Years' War and the diplomatic revolution of 1756, Empress Maria Theresa decided to end hostilities with her longtime enemy, King Louis XV of France. Their common desire to destroy the ambitions of Prussia and Great Britain, and to secure a definitive peace between their respective countries led them to seal their alliance with a marriage. On the 7th of February 1770, Louis XV formally requested the hand of Maria Antonia for his eldest surviving grandson and heir, Louis-Auguste, Duc de Berry and Dauphin of France. Maria Antonia formally renounced her rights to Habsburg domains, and on the 19th of April she was married by proxy to the Dauphin of France at the Augustinian Church in Vienna, with her brother Archduke Ferdinand standing in for the Dauphin. On the 14th of May she met her husband at the edge of the forest of Compiègne. Upon her arrival in France, she adopted the French version of her name, Marie Antoinette. A further ceremonial wedding took place on the 16th of May 1770 in the Palace of Versailles and, after the festivities, the day ended with the ritual bedding. The couple's longtime failure to consummate the marriage plagued the reputations of both Louis-Auguste and Marie Antoinette for the next 7 years. The initial reaction to the marriage between Marie Antoinette and Louis-Auguste was mixed. On the one hand, the Dauphine was beautiful, personable and well liked by the common people. Her first official appearance in Paris on the 8th of June 1773 was a resounding success. On the other hand, those opposed to the alliance with Austria had a difficult relationship with Marie Antoinette, as did others who disliked her for more personal or petty reasons. Upon the death of Louis XV on the 10th of May 1774, the Dauphin ascended the throne as King Louis XVI of France and Navarre with Marie Antoinette as his royal consort. At the outset, The new queen had limited political influence with her husband, who, with the support of his two most important ministers, Chief Minister Maurepas and Foreign Minister Varennes, blocked several of her candidates from assuming important positions, including Choiseul. The Queen did play a decisive role in the disgrace and exile of the most powerful of Louis XV's ministers, the Duc d'Aiguillon. On the 24th of May 1774, 2 weeks after the death of Louis XV, the king gave his wife the Petit Trianon, a small chateau on the grounds of Versailles that had been built by Louis XV for his mistress, Madame de Pompadour. Louis XVI allowed Marie Antoinette to renovate it to suit her own tastes. Soon rumors circulated that she had plastered the walls with gold and diamonds. The Queen spent heavily on fashion, luxuries, and gambling, though the country was facing a grave financial crisis and the population was suffering. Rose Burton created dresses for her, and hairstyles such as poufs, up to 3 feet, 90 centimeters, high, and the panache, a spray of feather plumes. She and her court also adopted the English fashion of dresses made of indienne, a material banned in France from 1686 until 1759 to protect local French woolen and silk industries. Because as a result of all these fashion activities, Marie Antoinette presided over one of the most important and fashionable courts in history, and she was dominant over all of the other ladies of the court. As for her bearing and appearance, the Queen was very majestic and charismatic in spite of the fact that she gained a lot of weight over the years due to her many pregnancies. Marie Antoinette represented and played the role of the Queen better than anyone in her court with her grace and demeanor. By the time of the Flower War of 1775, a series of riots, due to the high price of flour and bread, had damaged her reputation among the general public. Eventually, Marie Antoinette's reputation was no better than that of the favorites of previous kings. Many French people were beginning to blame her for the degrading economic situation, suggesting the country's inability to pay off its debt was the result of her wasting the crown's money. In her correspondence, Marie Antoinette's mother, Maria Theresa, expressed concern over her daughter's spending habits, citing the civil unrest it was beginning to cause. As early as 1774, Marie Antoinette had begun to befriend some of her male admirers, such as the Baron de Bessenval, the Duc de Coigny, and Count Valentin Esterhazy, and also formed deep friendships with various ladies at court. Most noted was Marie-Louise, Princesse de Lamballe, related to the royal family through her marriage into the Penthièvre family. On the 19th of September 1774 she appointed her superintendent of her household, an appointment she soon transferred to her new favorite, the Duchesse de Polignac. Amidst the atmosphere of a wave of libels, the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II came to France incognito, using the name Comte de Falkenstein, for a 6-week visit during which he toured Paris extensively and was a guest at Versailles. He met his sister and her husband on the 18th of April 1777 at the Château de la Muette, and spoke frankly to his brother-in-law, curious as to why the royal marriage had not been consummated, arriving at the conclusion that no obstacle to the couple's conjugal relations existed save the Queen's lack of interest and the King's unwillingness to exert himself. In a letter to his brother Leopold, Grand Duke of Tuscany, Joseph II described them as a couple of complete blunderers. He disclosed to Leopold that the inexperienced, then still only 22-year-old, Louis XVI had confided in him the course of action he had been undertaking in their marital bed, saying Louis XVI introduces the member, but then stays there without moving for about 2 minutes, withdraws without having completed the act, and bids good night. Suggestions that Louis suffered from phimosis, which was relieved by circumcision, have been discredited. Nevertheless, following Joseph's intervention, the marriage was finally consummated in August 1777. 8 months later, in April 1778, it was suspected that the Queen was pregnant, which was officially announced on the 16th of May. Marie Antoinette's daughter, Marie Therese Charlotte, Madame Royale, was born at Versailles on the 19th of December 1778. In the middle of the Queen's pregnancy, two events occurred which had a profound effect on her later life: the return of her friend, the Swedish diplomat Count Axel von Fersen, to Versailles for 2 years, and her brother's claim to the throne of Bavaria, contested by the Habsburg monarchy and Prussia. Marie Antoinette pleaded with her husband for the French to intercede on behalf of Austria. The Peace of Teschen, signed on the 13th of May 1779, ended the brief conflict, with the Queen imposing French mediation at her mother's insistence and Austria's gaining a territory of at least 100,000 inhabitants, a strong retreat from the early French position which was hostile towards Austria. This gave the impression, partially justified, that the Queen had sided with Austria against France. Meanwhile, the Queen began to institute changes in court customs. Some of them met with the disapproval of the older generation, such as the abandonment of heavy makeup and the popular wide-hooped panniers. The new fashion called for a simpler feminine look, typified first by the rustic robe à la polonaise style and later by the gaule, a layered muslin dress Marie Antoinette wore in a 1783 Vigée Le Brun portrait. In 1780 she began to participate in amateur plays and musicals in the Théâtre de la Reine built for her by Richard Meek. Repayment of the French debt remained a difficult problem, further exacerbated by Varennes and also by Marie Antoinette's prodding. Louis XVI to involve France in Great Britain's war with its North American colonies. The primary motive for the Queen's involvement in political affairs in this period may arguably have had more to do with court factionalism than any true interest on her part in politics themselves. But she played an important role in aiding the American Revolution by securing Austrian and Russian support for France, which resulted in the establishment of the First League of Armed Neutrality that stopped Britain's attack, and by weighing in decisively for the nomination of Philippe Henry, Marquis de Chagor, as Minister of War and Charles-Eugene Gabriel de la Croix as Secretary of the Navy in 1780, who helped George Washington defeat the British in the American Revolutionary War, which ended in 1783. Marie Antoinette's second pregnancy ended in a miscarriage early in July 1779, as confirmed by letters between the Queen and her mother, although some historians believed that she may have experienced bleeding related to an irregular menstrual cycle, which she mistook for a lost pregnancy. Her third pregnancy was affirmed in March 1781, and on the 22nd of October she gave birth to Louis-Joseph Xavier François, Dauphin of France. Empress Maria Theresa died on the 29th of November 1780 in Vienna. Marie Antoinette feared that the death of her mother would jeopardize the Franco-Austrian alliance, as well as, ultimately, herself, but her brother, Joseph II, Holy Roman Emperor, wrote to her that he had no intention of breaking the alliance. A second visit from Joseph II, which took place in July 1781 to reaffirm the Franco-Austrian alliance and also to see his sister, was tainted by false rumors that Marie Antoinette was sending money to him from the French treasury. On the 27th of April 1784 Beaumarchais' play The Marriage of Figaro premiered in Paris. Initially banned by the king due to its negative portrayal of the nobility, the play was finally allowed to be publicly performed because of the Queen's support and its overwhelming popularity at court, where secret readings of it had been given by Marie Antoinette. The play was a disaster for the image of the monarchy and aristocracy. It inspired Mozart's La Nozze di Figaro, which premiered in Vienna on 1 May 1786. On 24 October 1784, putting the Baron de Breteuil in charge of its acquisition, Louis XVI bought the Château de St. Cloud from the Duc d'Orléans in the name of his wife, which she wanted due to their expanding family. She wanted to be able to own her own property, one that was actually hers, to then have the authority to bequeath it to whichever of my children I wish, choosing the child she thought could use it rather than it going through patriarchal inheritance laws or whims. It was proposed that the cost could be covered by other sales, such as that of the Château Trompette in Bordeaux. This was unpopular, particularly with those factions of the nobility who disliked the Queen, but also with a growing percentage of the population, who disapproved of a Queen of France independently owning a private residence. The purchase of St. Cloud thus damaged the public's image of the Queen even further. The chateau's high price, almost 6 million livres, plus the substantial extra cost of redecorating, ensured that much less money was going towards repaying France's substantial debt. On the 27th of March 1785, Marie Antoinette gave birth to a second son, Louis Charles, who bore the title of Duc de Normandy. The fact that the birth occurred exactly 9 months after Fersen's return did not escape the attention of many, leading to doubt as to the parentage of the child and to a noticeable decline of the Queen's reputation in public opinion. The majority of Marie Antoinette's and Louis XVII's biographers believed that the young prince was the biological son of Louis XVI, including Stephen Zweig and Antonia Fraser, who believed that Fersen and Marie Antoinette were indeed romantically involved. Fraser has also noted that the birth date matches up perfectly with a known conjugal visit from the king. Courtiers at Versailles noted in the diaries that the date of the child's conception in fact corresponded perfectly with a period when the king and the queen had spent much time together, but these details were ignored amid attacks on the queen's character. These suspicions of illegitimacy, along with the continued publication of the libels and never-ending cavalcades of court intrigues, the actions of Joseph II in the Kettle War, the purchase of St. Cloud and the affair of the diamond necklace combined to turn popular opinion sharply against the Queen, and the image of a licentious, spendthrift, empty-headed foreign queen was quickly taking root in the French psyche. A second daughter, her last child, Marie-Sophie Hélène Beatrix, Madame Sophie, was born on the 9th of July 1786 and lived only 11 months until the 19th of June 1787. She was named after the king's aunt, Princess Sophie of France. Marie Antoinette began to abandon her more carefree activities to become increasingly involved in politics in her role as Queen of France. By publicly showing her attention to the education and care of her children, the Queen sought to improve the dissolute image she had acquired in 1785 from the diamond necklace affair, in which public opinion had falsely accused her of criminal participation in defrauding the jewelers Baumer and Bassange of the price of an expensive diamond necklace they had originally created for Madame du Barry. The main actors in the scandal were Cardinal de Rohan, Prince de Rohan-Guémené, Great Almoner of France, and Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Remy, Comtesse de la Motte, a descendant of an illegitimate child of Henry II of France of the House of Valois. Madame de la Motte tricked Rohan into buying the necklace as a gift to Marie Antoinette, for him to gain the Queen's favor. When the affair was discovered, those involved, except de la Motte and Rétaux de Villette, who both managed to flee, were arrested, tried, convicted, and either imprisoned or exiled. Madame de la Motte was sentenced for life to confinement in the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital, which also served as a prison for women. Judged by the Parlement, Rohan was found innocent of any wrongdoing and allowed to leave the Bastille. Marie Antoinette, who had insisted on the arrest of the cardinal, was dealt a heavy personal blow, as was the monarchy, and despite the fact that the guilty parties were tried and convicted, the affair proved to be extremely damaging to her reputation, which never recovered from it. Suffering from an acute case of depression, the king began to seek the advice of his wife. In her new role and with increasing political power, the Queen tried to improve the awkward situation brewing between the Assembly and the King. This change of the Queen's position signaled the end of the Polignacs' influence and their impact on the finances of the Crown. France's financial problems were the result of a combination of factors: several expensive wars, a large royal family whose expenditures were paid for by the state, and an unwillingness on the part of most members of the privileged classes, aristocracy, and clergy, to help defray the costs of the government out of their own pockets by relinquishing some of their financial privileges. As a result of the public perception that she had single-handedly ruined the national finances, Marie Antoinette was given the nickname of Madame Deficit in the summer of 1787. Marie Antoinette's primary concern was the continued deterioration of the health of the Dauphin, who suffered from tuberculosis. She was directly involved in the exile of the Parlement, the May edicts, and the announcement regarding the Estates General. She did participate in the King Council, the first queen to do this in over 175 years, since Marie de' Medici had been named chef du Conseil du Roi between 1614 and 1617, and she was making the major decisions behind the scene and in the Royal Council. The death of the Dauphin on the 4th of June, which deeply affected his parents, was virtually ignored by the French people, who were instead preparing for the meeting of the Estates General and hoping for a resolution to the bread crisis. As the Third Estate declared itself a national assembly and took the tennis court oath, and as people either spread or believed rumors that the Queen wished to bathe in their blood, Marie Antoinette went into mourning for her eldest son. Her role was decisive in urging the king to remain firm and not concede to popular demands for reforms. In addition, she showed her determination to use force to crush the forthcoming revolution. Despite these dramatic changes, life at the court continued, while the situation in Paris was becoming critical because of bread shortages in September. On the 5th of October, a crowd from Paris descended upon Versailles and forced the royal family to move to the Tuileries Palace in Paris, where they lived under a form of house arrest under the watch of Lafayette's Garde Nationale, while the Comte de Provence and his wife were allowed to reside in the Petit Luxembourg, where they remained until they went into exile on the 20th of June 1791. The only time the royal couple returned to Paris in that period was on the 14th of July to attend the Fête de la Fédération, an official ceremony held at the Champ de Mars in commemoration of the fall of the Bastille 1 year earlier. At least 300,000 persons participated from all over France, including 18,000 National Guards, with Talleyrand, Bishop of Autun, celebrating a Mass at the Autel de la Patrie, altar of the fatherland. The king was greeted at the event with loud cheers of, "Long live the king," especially when he took the oath to protect the nation and to enforce the laws voted by the Constitutional Assembly. There were even cheers for the queen, particularly when she presented the Dauphin to the public. Religion played an important role in the life of Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI, both raised in the Roman Catholic faith. The Queen's political ideas and her belief in the absolute power of monarchs were based on France's long-established tradition of the divine right of kings. On the 18th of April, as the royal family prepared to leave for St. Cloud to attend Easter Mass celebrated by a refractory priest, a crowd, soon joined by the Garde Nationale, disobeying Lafayette's orders, prevented the departure from Paris, prompting Marie Antoinette to declare to Lafayette that she and her family were no longer free. This incident fortified her in her determination to leave Paris for personal and political reasons, not alone, but with her family. Even the king, who had been hesitant, accepted his wife's decision to flee with the help of foreign powers and counter-revolutionary forces. Fersen and Breteil, who represented her in the courts of Europe, were put in charge of the escape plan, while Marie Antoinette continued her negotiations with some of the moderate leaders of the French Revolution. After many delays, the escape was ultimately attempted on the 21st of June 1791, but the entire family was arrested less than 24 hours later at Varennes and taken back to Paris within a week. The escape attempt destroyed much of the remaining support of the population for the king. Upon learning of the capture of the royal family, the National Constituent Assembly sent 3 representatives, Antoine Barnave, Jérôme Pétion de Villeneuve and Charles César de Fay de la Tour Maubourg to Varennes to escort Marie Antoinette and her family back to Paris. On the way to the capital they were jeered and insulted by the people as never before. The prestige of the French monarchy had never been at such a low level. During the trip, Barnave, the representative of the moderate party in the assembly, protected Marie Antoinette from the crowds, and even Pétion took pity on the royal family. Brought safely back to Paris, they were met with total silence by the crowd. Thanks to Varennes, the royal couple was not brought to trial and was publicly exonerated of any crime in relation with the attempted escape. Marie Antoinette continued to hope that the military coalition of European kingdoms would succeed in crushing the revolution. She counted most on the support of her Austrian family. After the death of her brother Joseph in 1790, his successor, Leopold, was willing to support her to a limited degree. Upon Leopold's death in 1792, his son, Francis, a conservative ruler, was ready to support the cause of the French royal couple more vigorously because he feared the consequences of the French Revolution and its ideas for the monarchies of Europe, particularly for Austria's influence in the continent. Leopold's and Francis II's strong action on behalf of Marie Antoinette led to France's declaration of war on Austria on 20 April 1792. This resulted in the Queen being viewed as an enemy, although she was personally against Austrian claims to French territories on European soil. That summer, the situation was compounded by multiple defeats of the French armies by the Austrians, in part because Marie Antoinette passed on military secrets to them. In addition, at the insistence of his wife, Louis XVI vetoed several measures that would have further restricted his power, earning the royal couple the nicknames Monsieur Veto and Madame Veto, nicknames then prominently featured in different contexts, including Le Carmagnole. On 20 June 1792, a mob of terrifying aspect broke into the Tuileries, made the king wear the bonnet rouge, red Phrygian cap, to show his loyalty to the Republic, insulted Marie Antoinette, accusing her of betraying France, and threatened her life. In consequence, the Queen asked Fersen to urge the foreign powers to carry out the plans to invade France and to issue a manifesto in which they threatened to destroy Paris if anything happened to the royal family. The Brunswick Manifesto, issued on 25 July 1792, triggered the events of 10 August when the approach of an armed mob on its way to the Tuileries Palace forced the royal family to seek refuge at the Legislative Assembly. 90 minutes later, the palace was invaded by the mob, who massacred the Swiss guards. On 13 August the royal family was imprisoned in the tower of the temple in the Marais under conditions considerably harsher than those of their previous confinement in the Tuileries. A week later, several of the royal family's attendants, among them the Princesse de Lamballe, were taken for interrogation by the Paris Commune. Transferred to the La Force prison, after a rapid judgment, Marie-Louise de Lamballe was savagely killed on 3 September. Her head was affixed on a pike and paraded through the city to the temple for the Queen to see. Marie Antoinette was prevented from seeing it, but fainted upon learning of it. On 21 September 1792, the fall of the monarchy was officially declared and the National Convention became the convention, led by the Jacobins who rejected the idea of keeping him as a hostage. On 15 January 1793, by a majority of 6 votes, he was condemned to death by guillotine and executed on 21 January 1793. The former queen, now called Widow Capet, plunged into deep mourning. She still hoped her son Louis Charles, whom the exiled Comte de Provence, Louis XVI's brother, had recognized as Louis XVI's successor, would one day rule France. After Louis's execution, Marie Antoinette's fate became a central question of the National Convention. While some advocated her death, others proposed exchanging her for French prisoners of war or for a ransom from the Holy Roman Emperor. Thomas Paine advocated exile to America. In April 1793, during the Reign of Terror, a Committee of Public Safety, dominated by Robespierre, was formed, and men such as Jacques Havert began to call for Marie Antoinette's trial. Marie Antoinette was tried by the Revolutionary Tribunal on 14 October 1793. Some historians believe the outcome of the trial had been decided in advance by the Committee of Public Safety around the time the Carnation plot was uncovered. She and her lawyers were given less than 1 day to prepare her defense. Among the accusations, many previously published in the libels, were orchestrating orgies in Versailles, sending millions of livres of treasury money to Austria, planning the massacre of the Gardes Françaises, National Guards, in 1792, declaring her son to be the new King of France, and incest, a charge made by her son Louis Charles, pressured into doing so by the radical Jacques Havet who controlled him. This last accusation drew an emotional response from Marie Antoinette, who refused to respond to this charge, instead appealing to all mothers present in the room. Their reaction comforted her since these women were not otherwise sympathetic to her. Early on the 16th of October, Marie Antoinette was declared guilty of the 3 main charges against her: depletion of the national treasury, conspiracy against the internal and external security of the state, and high treason because of her intelligence activities in the interest of the enemy. The latter charge alone was enough to condemn her to death. At worst, she and her lawyers had expected life imprisonment. In the hours left to her, she composed a letter to her sister-in-law Madame Elizabeth, affirming her clear conscience, her Catholic faith, and her love and concern for her children. The letter did not reach Elizabeth. Her will was part of the collection of papers of Robespierre found under his bed and was published by Edme Bonaventure Courtois. Preparing for her execution, she had to change clothes in front of her guards. She wanted to wear a black dress but was forced to wear a plain white dress, white being the color worn by widowed queens of France. Her hair was shorn, her hands bound painfully behind her back, and she was put on a rope leash. Unlike her husband, who had been taken to his execution in a carrosse, she had to sit in an open cart, chariot, for the hour it took to convey her from the conciergerie via the Rue Saint-Honoré. Last words are recorded as, "Pardonnez-moi, monsieur. Je n'ai pas fait exprès," or, "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose," after accidentally stepping on her executioner's shoe. Marie Tussaud was employed to make a death mask of her head. Her body was thrown into an unmarked grave in the Madeleine Cemetery, located close by in Rue d'Anjou. Because its capacity was exhausted, the cemetery was closed the following year, on the 25th of March 1794. Thanks for watching. Subscribe my channel for more videos.